Conditions are applied by Unraveling Truth, Chapter 3, Redemption and Other Things Too Far Out of Reach. This chapter goes with Chapter 191 and is Katsuki's point of view of those events. Katsuki tugged his shoes on, the final piece of the puzzle to complete his uniform. A glance in the mirror told him all he needed. Tidy, carefully crafted delinquent look, courtesy of his pants sagging, and a general attitude of not caring about what others had to say in the slightest. So why was he so conflicted? He walked downstairs, thankfully having the place to himself for the moment. Breakfast was waiting for him, still warm, and the solitude made for great thinking time. What did it mean to be a hero? He glared at his food as if it were to blame for his current situation, as if it held the answers he sought. Heroes were strong. You didn't climb the rankings by being some loser nobody. Katsuki believed he was strong. He had it beaten into his head from the moment he got his quirk. Strength was everything. You beat the villain, you rescue the civilians, you move on to the next. So why the hell did he get proven wrong so many times? Someone strong wouldn't have gotten kidnapped. They wouldn't be the reason All Might had to suffer. He was no better than a civilian. If he weren't so weak as to have gotten kidnapped in the first place, none of this would have ever happened. So if he wasn't strong, then how could Katsuki Bakugo be a hero? He idly worked in his notebook, jotting down notes as needed. He still didn't know what being a hero meant. Was it heroic, what Deku did? That stupid stealth mission that Katsuki had nearly fumbled? He was hidden just fine until he got caught somehow. Some freakishly strong quirk and the ability to find his hiding spot? Just what kind of bullshit was that? Were heroes meant to do underhanded things if it was for a good cause? Where did Deku get the guts to go and wire someone's house? How did that stuttering mess manage to get a villain like that damn crispy bacon to agree with his plans? Deku seemed to have his shit together, so Katsuki had listened to him that once. He had lied to the teachers for his sake, but where was he supposed to draw the line? At what point was all of the secret keeping doing more harm than good? Did he crash Deku's plans for his own sake? Or was he doing what the heroic Deku told him to? If being the strongest wasn't what made a hero, then how would he even begin to find out what did? Staring at the back of Deku's head, the pieces slowly began to click. What made a hero? The answers were in front of him this whole time. Katsuki laid on the grass in some random park, the sounds of children and adults filling the air at a distance. He figured this was the perfect place to get some thinking done. Not the same violently quiet four walls of his bedroom that were well on their way to driving him to insanity. Or the deafening chaos of class. Just enough noise to not get stuck in his head. He was a pretty shitty person sometimes, huh? Well, a lot of the time. But he'd kill anyone who tried to point that out. Punching Deku on that day hadn't been his brightest move. He was right. He couldn't become a hero if that was how he treated people. Was he a bully? That's certainly one way to look at it. He considered a public service to keep people in their place so they don't get hurt aiming for things they can't achieve. But look at them now. Deku made it into the school of his dreams, despite all the attempts Katsuki had made to keep his spirits in the gutter. A hero was someone who lifted people up. That's just a fact. Aizawa-sensei believed in Deku. He'd sooner rehabilitate the League than join any of those freaks. Katsuki hated to agree, but the man was right. Deku saw good in people who couldn't see it even in themselves, in people who didn't deserve it. He never told Deku to chase after him. The League chose him because of his attitude. That's what got him kidnapped. Yet Deku decided to risk his own life to bring Katsuki home. Was that also being a hero? Risking it all, even if it was just to save one person? Even if that person was someone not worth the trouble? Maybe he was right. Katsuki couldn't become a hero if he kept going at this rate. He was already on thin ice as is, but if he went through with his plan, he could kiss this school goodbye. But if throwing away his career was the most heroic thing he'd ever do in his life, if it meant he could protect at least one person, then he'd do it. Who cares if Deku sold him out? It wasn't as if he'd made a good case for himself in the first place. This was the least he could do. Rubbing the back of his neck, Katsuki took a breather. They'd been hard at work training in the gym just to catch up on what they'd missed due to camp being attacked. Call him selfish, but he wanted to enjoy his time here a little longer. Let his quirk loose. Look at all the future heroes he wouldn't get to walk alongside soon enough. He didn't care for most of them, but he'd likely miss some of them. Steeling his nerves, he stomped over to Aizawa, folding his arms as he stared at the man. Yo, teach. You got a minute? Kind of important. The perpetually tired man, to his credit, could in fact spare the time to look away from the other troublemakers for a moment. It probably helped having multiple teachers there. Yes, Bakugo? That crap with the detective? Yeah, I've got some more info. I might have left a few things out. That definitely got his attention, as the man's eyes subtly widened. With a small scowl, he signaled for someone else to take over as he led Katsuki out of the gym and down the hall. The man seemed to be texting rapidly and even placing a call or two. Nothing Katsuki cared to keep track of, but he could only assume it was relevant to his confession. Once he was escorted to an empty meeting room, all that was left to do was wait. Katsuki sat still, arms folded, as he stared across the table at the teachers gathered. Principal Nedzu sat directly across from him, the detective to his left, and Aizawa-sensei to his right. President Mike sat to the right of the gloomy-looking teacher, doing their best to at least offer a reassuring smile. So, Bakugo, there's something you wish to tell us? The detective decided to start things off. Katsuki sat for several moments longer, silently glaring at the group. He had already made up his mind, but that didn't make coming clean any easier. He just had to man up and live with the consequences. Deku, Izuku, he knows someone in the league. There were various reactions to that, all various stages of shock, but Nedzu somehow remained calm through it all. It's not like the nerd, it's not like he's planning to betray the school or something. They were hatching some kind of plan. The occupants of the room seemed to collectively look at the detective, where he slowly nodded. As far as Bakugo is aware, he's telling the truth of Midoriya's intentions, the man stated. Katsuki nodded, deciding to continue on. Apparently, Izuku bugged someone's house, and that was enough for Dabi to take his word. He helped us out, and Izuku plans to get him cleaned up. Katsuki allowed that to sink in for a few moments, sighing as his gaze lowered to the table. He met up with them, the both of us, really. I thought I'd scope out the scene, but somehow Izuku knew I was there, made me wait outside. After the detective confirmed his story as truth, Aizawa placed his hands on the table, pushing himself upwards. Bakugo, that was incredibly dangerous. What were you thinking? Aizawa asked, his tone as close to yelling as Bakugo had ever heard from the normally unenthusiastic teacher. Katsuki scowled, having the nerve to lift his eyes and glare at his teacher. I couldn't let him go on his own, and a bunch of pros would have gotten the whole deal cut off. I did what I could, he shouted back. Aizawa seemed ready to respond when President Mike placed a hand on his shoulder, causing the man to at least ease up. Katsuki settled himself down, reluctantly trying to keep his calm. I think he's planning on meeting him again. There's some sort of deal going on. I think he's got it figured out, but... It remained unspoken that he was worried. It felt so strange to admit, even to himself, but he knew it to be true. The principal, for the first time since entering the room, seemed to finally be ready to speak. Thank you for informing us, Bakugo. We will have further discussions about your actions later, but for the moment, would you kindly escort your classmate here? Katsuki gulped. admittedly not immune to how unnerving Nedzu could be. Hand placed on the table, he stood up, nodding as he moved to leave the room. "No problem," he replied, all too relieved to get out of there as quickly as possible. With a sigh that did little to relieve the tension in his shoulders, Katsuki slowly walked back to the gym like a man approaching the gallows. He'd done it. Aizawa-sensei, Principal Nedzu, that detective, and President Mike, all of them were aware of the fact that he was a liar. Now they knew as much of the truth about Deku as he could give. Making friends with that Dobby guy, organizing a meeting, the cameras, all that other secret agent crap Deku had been up to the best of his ability, he'd told them what he could. He knew Deku would be furious. He'd likely deliver on his promise to tell everyone about his past, but it didn't matter anymore. He did the right thing. A paltry reassurance that was doing little to soothe his mounting dread. Shouldering the doors to the gym open, he stomped over to Deku, staring at him and round-faced training. "Deku, we need to talk." He spotted the exact moment the other boy tensed up, be it from fear or something else he didn't know. That's the kind of hero he was on the path to being, huh? The kind that made people flinch with a single sentence. "Can it wait?" Deku asked, understandably trying to avoid whatever this was. "No!" Katsuki immediately barked back, crushing his hopes and dreams yet again. "We're kind of in the middle of class right now," Deku pointed out. "You care about the rules all of a sudden?" Katsuki retorted. Katsuki watched him cringe, knowing he would have been happy to see such a response a few short months ago. The glare was a new one, though. He truly had changed. "I already asked the teachers. Come on," he stated as he walked away, beckoning for Deku to follow. He was out of the gym and halfway down the hall by the time Deku finally caught up to him. "Where the hell are we going?" he asked once they were side by side. "We're almost there. Just calm down, Deku." Katsuki brushed him off. Katsuki knew Deku's patience was running out, but surprisingly he didn't crack until they were right on top of their destination. "I'm not gonna let you drag me across campus. Just tell me." Katsuki stopped directly next to an open doorway, staring through the entrance with his hands in his pockets. He glared at Deku in pure reflex, faltering slightly at the look of sheer violence, anger, hatred. "Midoriya, please take a seat." Aizawa spoke up from where he stood next to the doorway. Katsuki didn't need to be a genius to sense the tension in the air, but it wasn't as if he could do anything about it. He had already made his choice, and it's not as if he could take it back. "You motherfucker." The curse slipped free from Deku's clenched teeth. "Thank you, Bakugo. That will be all. You can go join your classmates." Aizawa tried to dismiss the growing tension. Katsuki silently looked between the two of them, meeting Deku's glare every so often. He refused to back down from the choice he'd made. Maybe Deku would hate him now, if he didn't already, but it would be worth it in the end. One day he'd understand it was to keep him safe. Right as he'd finally grown tired of this staring contest, his attempt to leave was blocked by a fist slamming into his jaw. A solid right hook. Katsuki groaned as he crashed into the ground, wincing at the sudden impact. By the time he opened his eyes, Deku had already been wrapped up in Aizawa's capture scarf with his quirk disabled. His body being tied up certainly didn't stop his mouth from running. "What's your frickin' damage? What was the point of all your questions, huh? Did you realize you can't beat me now that I've got a quirk, so you're scrambling for the moral high ground? 'Cause it's too frickin' late for that. You—" His shouting cut off abruptly when Aizawa rectified his mistake and looped his scarf around Deku's mouth. "Izuku, sit your ass down," Aizawa ordered him in a low, threatening tone. Katsuki reached a hand to his lip, staring at his hand as it came away red. That punch had split his lip at the very least. He could taste the blood coating his mouth. Not the worst injury he'd received, and definitely less than he deserved. Clenching his bloodied hand, he placed it on the ground and stared down as he gathered himself. Since when was a teacher on a first-name basis with Deku? Things to think about when he wasn't dizzy. "Mike, take him to Recovery Girl. I'll fill you in later," Aizawa ordered. Kotsky looked up just in time to see the glare still resting heavily on their teacher's face, Deku firmly strapped to a chair. He'd almost call the scene comical if it weren't for the circumstances. He reluctantly accepted the hand offered to pull him up and allowed Present Mike to lead him down the hall. "Come on, kiddo. We'll have you right as rain in no time," they said, much quieter than the volume Kotsky had come to expect from them. Right as rain seemed like a long shot. Could everything get better after this? He wouldn't get his hopes up. End of chapter.